Hello, I'm just in the Canadian Tuxedo. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the new Coheed and Cambria album called Vaxis Act 2, A Window of the Waking Mind. This is Coheed and Cambria's 10th studio album and part 2 of a 5-part Vaxis series. Now, for those who don't know, there is an underlying story in the Coheed and Cambria discography. Similar to, say, 21 Pilots or Mariana's Trench, Coheed records can be easily enjoyed without an understanding of the lore. And this album is one of their most ambitious musically. They mix elements of modern progressive metal with pop punk, post-punk, synth pop, and Broadway. 20 years into their career, and the band isn't afraid to take risks, and it really pays off. The album is filled with complex arrangements with polyrhythms, but still manages to be one of the band's most accessible albums to date. The mix is clear and powerful, and the production is
gigantic in scale.
All this while maintaining a very wide dynamic range. It's a wild record filled with unexpected twists and turns, and it's honestly an incredible body of work. So, let's dive into the album. As I previously mentioned, this is the second part of a 5-part series, and this album opens with the Embers of Fire, which brings the musical theme from the track Old Flames, which was towards the end of their previous record, Unheavenly Creatures. The track opens with the sounds of crackling fire and the voice of a child and soft piano playing, before the song roars to life with bombastic percussion, strings and synths, and a choir of vocals chanting the refrain, "We all go up in flames." It's really epic, and it's a solid way to open up the record. This leads right into Beautiful Losers, which comes in with a very Brian May-like guitar passage before leading you into this classic Coheed and Cambria sound. It feels like it could have come right off of Good Apollo. Claudio's vocals are fantastic. The chorus on this feels epic and grand. The bridge brings back the Brian May riffage from the intro. This song feels like classic Coheed and Cambria, and it starts the record off in an appropriately epic fashion. This is followed up by the instantly catchy Comatose, filled with syncopated rhythms and whirling guitar counter melodies. The song makes me think of The Police, but with big, loud, heavy guitars. And the bridge has some really cool synths and percussion before the drums get to fill in for like 12 bars, which is nuts. And I love that the song is very technically difficult, but it still remains as one of the most poppy sounding tracks on the entire record. The band has gotten really good at making pop songs at such a technical level that makes the more progressive elements seem much more digestible. Then we have the monstrous track Shoulders, which features one of the coolest riffs that Claudio has written since Welcome Home. I feel like this song takes the modern riffage of a Royal Blood track and combines it with modern progressive metal. The guitar tones have synth-like quality to them, and for me, this song reminds me of something that would be from like a superhero movie soundtrack. The chorus takes a departure and goes full anthemic sing-along, and it's kind of refreshing to have such a musical shift. The interplay between the drums and guitars are incredible, and there's a noisy wailing guitar solo towards the end that is very exhilarating. It's a fantastic single off the album and definitely a solid track. The next track, Disappearing Act, is probably going to be divisive amongst fans. It's heavily influenced by dance and electronic music. It features a lot of synths and sequencers, and it took me by surprise when I first heard it. It's weird, but I kind of dig it, and I dig that the band have the confidence to go all out and make a pop song. They're trying new things and pushing the limits of their sound. There are some really cool 80s synth passages, the vocals are heavily affected, but it still feels like it fits right in with the sci-fi aesthetic of the Vaxis arc. That's a mouthful. I'm curious to see how this track will age, but I think it's cool that the band are still taking big swings. This is followed up by Love Murder 1. This song features R&B vocals, but also feels like a song by Survivor or Journey that could have been in the montage of a Rocky film. Even when it's doing this, it still manages to bring in heavy modern prog metal vibes. With its low-tuned guitars and complex rhythmic drum patterns, the vocal melody feels like it's right out of an R&B track, which is really cool. And this track feels very catchy and dancey even, and it feels fresh but with 80s nostalgia. The next track, Blood, is filled with detailed interplay between the band. The first half of the song is filled with skittering rhythms between the bass and the drums. The song really showcases the band's ability to elevate a pretty simple progression with winding melodies and breaks. The song has a floating feeling to it, and the back half of the song feels like it could have come right out of a Jonathan Larson musical with its big triumphant chord changes. In the bridge, the band blasts through with ringing power chords over a sequenced synth pattern. The song builds up to such a satisfying crescendo. Another strong single off this album was The Liars Club, which opens with an off-kilter sequence section. The beat is kind of hard to find at first, but as soon as the drums kick in, it suddenly becomes very clear and is incredibly satisfying. The vocals are delicate and emotive, and then when the chorus comes in, it's like a sledgehammer. It sends the song off like a tank rolling down a mountain. Moving full force with the drums pounding and roaring guitars, the bridge rings out in grandiose form with rising strings before building up to a pause, and then we get that last chorus and it sends the whole thing right over the top. This is a well-constructed piece of pop-punk meets prog metal. The next song, Bad Man, sounds kind of insane on paper. It's kind of like a weekend track with heavy drums and 8-string guitars piled on top for good measure. Claudio's vocal follows a melody that would be found on a Michael Jackson record. There's some fun guitar work throughout the track. The vocals are all dolled up and filtered, playing into the sci-fi feel of the album. And there's synths all over the track that sound like the trailer from Stranger Things. The song sounds evil and menacing while still being dancey. Next is the song Our Love, which is a very beautiful love song that feels like a nice break in this album. It has a delicate, airy quality to it, and it lets the album breathe for a minute. The production is still bombastic, but appropriately scaled back, filled with echoing guitars, piano, and vintage synths and drum machines. Claudio's voice is at the heart of the track, and there are some nice harmonies that are a staple of the Coheed and Cambria sound. It's a nice light moment on this record. This light gets quickly overshadowed by the overwhelming darkness of Ladders of Supremacy, which is one of the more progressive tracks on this album. This song feels like a combination of Rush, Dream Theater, and Queen. The song sounds so evil and menacing, and it feels like it's kind of like the moment in a film where like the hero meets the villain. This song feels like it has the drama of a Bob Ezrin record, but with a technical execution of something off 2112. The song shifts in movements filled with spiraling guitars harmonizing with each other. The song builds in intensity and ends with what sounds like a score from a John Carpenter film. This segues into Rise Naianasha, Cut the Chord, which features arrangements of polyrhythms and counter melodies woven together in such a clever way. It's wild to listen to on headphones, I tell you. The song has a gigantic chorus that's instantly infectious. The bridge is articulate and complex before giving way to a soft, distant chorus before the last chorus comes crashing in with layered vocals and guitar ad-libs on top. This is one of my faves off the album. It's an epic song that is so technically challenging while still being very accessible. The closing track, Window of the Waking Mind, starts off sounding like a cut by The Who, with acoustic guitars, strings, before launching into what sounds like an action sequence. Some flamenco guitar, a voiceover comes in, and then the song morphs and shifts in movements from a Broadway musical. This is by far the most progressive and thematical track within the album. It's incredibly epic, sprawling over the course of 8 minutes. It's an incredible composition, shifting tempos and time signatures. This is such an incredible way to end the record. It almost reminds me of how Mariana's Trench would bring orchestral sections into some of their records. I honestly loved it. I thought it was such a cool moment and such a powerful way to end the album. This album packs so many big ideas into one record, and I think it really pays off. The band takes a lot of risks and dives headfirst in, leaving nothing for the way back. This is probably their most ambitious record, and it's one of their most consistent as well. There's a lot to like, and even the album cuts are as strong as the singles. I am curious to see how some of these songs will age with time, but I think they've made one of their best records yet. All the performances are phenomenal and impeccable. I listened to it a bunch of times, and I love the record all the way through, so I'm going to give this album 5 very patched denim jackets out of 5. This album is killer, and you definitely need to check it out. Thanks for watching. If you like what you're seeing, like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what your favorite Coheed and Cambria record is, and what album do you think I should review next. Stay weird, my friends, and I'll catch you on the B-side.